She was a billionaire CEO until she was left freezing in a wheelchair at a bus stop with no one coming back. In the middle of a brutal Chicago snowstorm, Evelyn Carter, a once powerful CEO, was left alone at a bus stop with no money, no family, and no way to walk. Just when it seemed like her life had completely fallen apart, a stranger stepped in, the kind of man the world usually overlooks. And in that quiet, unexpected moment, everything began to change in ways neither of them could have imagined. The wheelchair slammed into the curb hard enough to rattle her teeth. Evelyn Carter didn't even flinch. She just sat there, breath caught somewhere between her chest and the frozen night air, watching the red glow of taillights fade into the blizzard. Snow swallowed the luxury sedan within seconds, as if it had never been there at all. As if he had never been there. "I didn't sign up for this." His voice still echoed in her mind, sharp and clean, like a blade that had been waiting years to finally cut. The wind howled down the empty Chicago street, tearing at her coat, pushing icy needles through every gap in the fabric. Snowflakes clung to her eyelashes, melted and froze again before she could blink them away. Behind her, the wrought iron gates of her father's estate stood tall and silent, locked. 30 years old, CEO, untouchable. Now, paralyzed, abandoned, and sitting alone at a bus stop that hadn't seen a bus in hours. Her phone buzzed in her lap. For a moment she didn't move. Some part of her, small, stubborn, stupid, hoped it was him, that he'd come to his senses, that he'd turned the car around. The screen lit up. Not him. Her father's assistant. "Your belongings will be donated. Do not contact this family again." Evelyn stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Then she locked the phone and placed it face down on her lap, like that might make it less real. She didn't cry. She hadn't cried in a long time. Not when the doctors told her she'd never walk again. Not when the board quietly shifted power away from her for the good of the company. Not when her fiancé started canceling dinners, avoiding eye contact, pretending he didn't notice how she struggled to transfer from chair to bed. Tears required energy, and right now energy was something she couldn't afford. The cold was already creeping in. It started at her fingers, slow, deliberate, turning sensation into a dull ache, then into nothing at all. Her legs, of course, felt nothing, dead weight beneath the blanket draped across them. A cruel irony she'd grown used to. Evelyn glanced at the bus stop bench. A thin layer of ice coated the surface, glinting under the flickering streetlight. She let out a breath that came out as a cloud of frost. Even if she could get onto it, she wouldn't last long. Not in this cold. Not dressed like this. Her coat was designer, cashmere-lined, tailored, perfect for stepping out of a heated car into a heated building. Not for sitting in a storm that clawed its way through every layer. She had never needed real winter gear before. Turns out, she had never needed a lot of things. A bitter smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, then faded. The city had already retreated indoors. Smart people were home, wrapped in blankets, drinking something warm, complaining about things that didn't matter. Normal problems. Evelyn would have traded everything she ever owned for normal problems. She shifted slightly in the chair, trying to conserve what little warmth remained. Her hands trembled uncontrollably now, the fine tremor turning into violent shivers she couldn't stop. Her teeth began to chatter. She pressed her jaw tight, trying to hold it back. What was the point? There was no one here to see her fall apart. No investors, no board members, no father watching for weakness. Just the wind, just the cold, just the quiet realization that everything she had built, every late night, every ruthless decision, every sacrifice had disappeared in a matter of hours. 2 years ago, the accident had taken her legs. Tonight, the rest of her life had followed. Evelyn leaned her head back against the cold metal frame of the bus shelter and closed her eyes. For a second, just a second, she let herself imagine what it would be like to stop fighting, to let the cold take over completely. It would be quiet, peaceful, maybe. No more expectations, no more pretending she was still the same woman she used to be. Just silence. "You're going to freeze out here." The voice cut through the wind like it didn't belong to it. Evelyn's eyes snapped open. She hadn't heard anyone approach. A man stood a few feet away, partially shadowed by the broken streetlight. Snow dusted his shoulders and hair. His hands were shoved deep into the pockets of a worn jacket that had seen better days. He looked ordinary. Not polished, not refined. Not someone who belonged in her world. "I'm fine," Evelyn said automatically. The words came out thin, brittle. Even she didn't believe them. The man tilted his head slightly, studying her. "You're shaking so hard I can hear your teeth from here." "I said I'm fine." There it was, that edge, that reflex. The same tone she'd used in boardrooms, in negotiations, in every moment where weakness wasn't an option. He didn't react the way most people did. Didn't soften. Didn't step back. Didn't offer that careful, distant pity she'd come to hate. Instead, he just watched her. Not like she was broken. Not like she was something fragile. Like she was a person making a bad decision. "Okay," he said finally. Evelyn frowned. "Okay?" "Okay," he repeated, shifting his weight slightly as he leaned against the side of the bus shelter. "Then I'll just wait here." "For what?" "For you to not be fine." The wind picked up again, whipping snow between them. Evelyn stared at him, irritation flaring, hot and sharp against the cold. "You're going to stand there and watch me freeze?" He shrugged, casual. "Nope." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a metal thermos. "I'm going to stand here until you admit you need help," he said, unscrewing the lid. "And then I'm going to help you." Steam curled into the frozen air as he poured something into the cap. The smell hit her instantly. Coffee. Real coffee, strong, dark, warm. Her stomach twisted painfully. She couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten. "I don't take charity," she said, forcing the words out. "Good thing I'm not offering any." He held out the cap, steam rising between them. "I made too much," he added. "I hate wasting things." Evelyn hesitated. Her fingers were numb now, her body shaking uncontrollably. The cold was winning. And that smell, that simple, ordinary smell, was breaking something inside her chest. The man didn't move closer, didn't push. He just stood there, arm extended, waiting. Snow piled up around the wheels of her chair. The city stayed silent. And for the first time that night, Evelyn Carter wasn't thinking about pride. She was thinking about survival. Her hand twitched. Then slowly, very slowly, she reached out. Their fingers brushed for a split second. His were warm. She had almost forgotten what that felt like. The cup settled into her hands, and as the heat seeped into her skin, into her bones, into the places the cold had already claimed, Evelyn realized something terrifying. For the first time since everything fell apart, she didn't feel completely alone. But she still didn't know who this man was. And in a world where everyone had already walked away, why hadn't he? Evelyn wrapped both hands around the metal cap, the heat almost too much at first. It burned her palms, sent sharp needles of sensation racing up her arms, but she didn't pull away. She held on to it like it was the only solid thing left in a world that had just collapsed. She lifted it slowly, careful not to spill. The coffee hit her lips, hot, bitter, real. It slid down her throat, spreading warmth into her chest, loosening something tight and knotted inside her ribs. For a second she forgot the cold, forgot the silence, forgot the way her life had just been erased. For a second she was just alive. "Careful," the man said, watching her. "Don't burn yourself." Evelyn lowered the cup slightly, her hands still trembling. "I won't," she muttered, though her voice shook. He studied her for a moment longer, then pushed himself off the metal frame of the shelter and stepped closer. Not too close, just enough to be there. Close enough that she could see him properly now. Early 30s maybe, dark skin, tired eyes that carried something heavy but steady. Snow clung to his short hair and the shoulders of his worn jacket. His boots were scuffed, the soles uneven like he'd walked miles in them. Not polished, not impressive, not the kind of man who belonged anywhere near the world Evelyn used to live in. And yet, he hadn't left. "You always this stubborn?" he asked. Evelyn let out a small breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "You always talk to strangers freezing in bus stops?" "Only the ones pretending they're fine." She looked away, back down the empty street. "I am fine." "Yeah," he said, nodding slowly. "You look great. Real convincing." There was no cruelty in his voice, no sarcasm meant to hurt, just honesty. It caught her off guard. Evelyn tightened her grip on the cup. "You should go," she said. "Seriously, there's nothing for you here." The wind picked up again, swirling snow between them. He didn't move. "Marcus," he said. She blinked. "What?" "My name," he clarified. "Figured if I'm gonna stand here and annoy you, you should at least know what to call me." Evelyn hesitated, then exhaled slowly. "Evelyn." "Nice to meet you, Evelyn." The way he said it, simple, direct, felt almost surreal. Like they were meeting at a coffee shop instead of standing in the middle of a storm with her life in pieces around her. She didn't respond. Marcus glanced down the street, then back at her. "So what's the plan?" "The plan?" she repeated. "For tonight," he said. "You waiting on someone?" Evelyn let out a dry laugh. "No." "Bus?" "Doesn't run." He nodded once, like he already knew. "So," he continued, tilting his head slightly, "you're just gonna sit here?" Evelyn took another sip of coffee, buying time. "I'm working on it." "How's that going?" she snapped. "Why do you care?" The words came out sharper than she intended, edged with exhaustion and something close to anger. Marcus didn't flinch. "Because," he said calmly, "you look like you're about 10 minutes away from losing feeling in your hands completely, and that's usually a bad sign." "I already don't feel my legs," she shot back. Silence hung between them for a beat. Then, softer, almost under her breath, she added, "That part's not new." Marcus didn't say anything right away. He just watched her. Really watched her. Not the wheelchair, not the coat, not the situation. Her. And for a moment, Evelyn felt exposed in a way she hadn't felt in years. "You got somewhere to go?" he asked finally. She didn't answer, because the truth was, no. No house, no hotel, no office, no backup plan. Nothing. Her phone buzzed again. She ignored it. Marcus followed her gaze, then looked back at her. "That a no?" She clenched her jaw. "It's none of your business." "Fair enough," he said. He leaned back against the shelter again, folding his arms loosely. "But it kinda is if you're about to freeze to death 10 feet from me." "I'm not going to—" Her words cut off as another violent shiver hit her, rattling through her body hard enough to make the coffee slosh in the cap. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Yeah," he said quietly. "You're doing great." Evelyn swallowed. The cold was deeper now. It wasn't just on her skin, it was inside her. Crawling through her veins, slowing everything down. Her fingers tightened around the cup. "I'll figure something out," she said, though it sounded weaker this time. Marcus let out a slow breath. Then he reached into his jacket again. Evelyn stiffened slightly, instinct kicking in, but he just pulled out the thermos, screwed the lid back on, and tucked it away. "No, you won't," he said. "What? You're not going to figure anything out sitting here," he continued, his tone still calm, still steady. "You're going to get colder. Then you're going to get tired. Then you're going to make a bad decision. I don't need—" "Yeah," he cut in gently. "You said that already." Evelyn glared at him. "You don't know me." "You're right," he said. "I don't." He pushed off the wall again, stepping a little closer this time. "But I know what this looks like." She frowned. "What does that mean?" Marcus hesitated, like he was choosing his words carefully. It means I've been on the wrong side of a bad night before, he said. Different details, same feeling. Evelyn's grip on the cup loosened slightly. For the first time, she noticed something else in his eyes. Not pity, recognition. That unsettled her more than anything. I'm not you, she said quietly. No, he agreed. You're not. Another gust of wind swept through, sharper than before. It cut straight through her coat, stealing what little warmth the coffee had given her. Her teeth started chattering again. She couldn't stop it this time. Marcus watched her for another second. Then he made a decision. I've got a place, he said. Evelyn blinked. What? Spare room, he continued. Heat works, bed's decent, no strings. She stared at him like he'd just said something insane. I don't even know you. True. And you think I'm just going to go home with a stranger? He shrugged slightly. I think you're about to lose fingers to frostbite, he said. So yeah, maybe the usual rules don't apply right now. Evelyn's first instinct was immediate. No. Everything in her, every instinct she'd built over 30 years of power, control, and survival screamed that this was a mistake. People didn't do things for free. Not in her world. There was always a cost. Always a reason. She looked at him again. Really looked this time. The worn jacket, the tired eyes, the way he stood, steady, patient, not pushing, not rushing her. No hidden agenda in his posture, no calculation. Just there, waiting. Snow gathered on her shoulders. Her hands had stopped hurting. That was worse. The cold was winning. Evelyn swallowed hard. I can't pay you, she said. Didn't ask you to. You don't owe me anything, Marcus said, cutting her off again. It's a couch or a bed and some heat. That's it. She hesitated. Her mind raced, trying to find the angle, the catch, the part she was missing. Why? She asked. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Then he shrugged, simple, almost casual. Because someone did it for me once, he said. Figured I should return the favor. It wasn't a business answer. It wasn't strategic. It didn't make sense. And somehow, that made it harder to reject. Evelyn looked down at her hands. They were barely holding the cup now. Her body was shaking uncontrollably. The street was empty. The city didn't care. No one was coming. Her voice, when it came, was quiet, fragile. Okay. Marcus didn't smile. Didn't act like he'd won something. He just nodded once. Okay, he said. And as he stepped forward to grab the handles of her wheelchair, Evelyn felt something shift. Not relief, not yet, but the smallest crack in the wall she'd built around herself, and she had no idea that saying yes to a stranger in the middle of a snowstorm was the first step toward a life she never saw coming. Marcus's hands were steady on the handles of the wheelchair. Evelyn noticed that first. Not the cold air biting at her face as he maneuvered her away from the bus stop, not the crunch of snow under his boots. Not even the way the wind seemed to follow them like it didn't want to let her go. Just his hands. Firm, careful, not grabbing, not rushing. Like she wasn't something fragile or something broken. Like she was simply a person being moved from one place to another. The thought unsettled her. She pulled the blanket tighter over her legs as he guided the chair toward the curb. Your truck? She asked, her voice still shaking. Yeah, he said, nodding toward a faded pickup parked under a flickering streetlight. It looked old. Not vintage old, just used. The paint had dulled over time, the bumper slightly dented. Snow gathered along the edges of the windshield, and the tires were thick with slush. Nothing about it screamed reliability, but it was running. The engine hummed low and steady, heat already blasting through the vents. Marcus moved quickly now, opening the passenger side door and stepping back. You good to transfer or you want help? He asked. Evelyn hesitated. That question alone caught her off guard. Most people didn't ask. They grabbed, assumed, took control. He just stood there, waiting, giving her the choice. "I can manage," she said quietly. All right. He didn't hover, didn't step in too close, just stayed nearby, close enough to help if she needed it, far enough to respect the space she hadn't realized she still had. Evelyn braced her hands on the armrests, feeling the sting of returning sensation as she shifted her weight. One movement at a time, careful, controlled. She lifted herself, pivoted, and slid into the passenger seat. It wasn't graceful, it never was, but she did it. Marcus stepped in then, folding the wheelchair with practiced ease and placing it in the back of the truck. That, too, didn't go unnoticed. He knew what he was doing, which meant he'd done this before. The realization sat quietly in the back of her mind as he climbed into the driver's seat. The door shut with a solid thud, cutting off the wind like someone had flipped a switch. Warm air rushed toward her face. Evelyn closed her eyes for a second, letting it wash over her. Her fingers burned as feeling came back. Sharp, painful, alive. "Sorry about the mess," Marcus said, reaching across to clear a pile of fast food wrappers from the center console. "Didn't expect company tonight." Evelyn opened her eyes. The truck smelled like fries, coffee, and something faintly sweet, like kids' shampoo. Her gaze drifted to the back seat. A small booster seat sat there, slightly crooked, a pink blanket draped over one side. A child. "You have a kid?" she asked. "Yeah," Marcus said, shifting the truck into gear. "Daughter." "How old?" "6. He pulled out slowly, tires crunching over packed snow. "Lily," he added. "She's staying with my mom tonight." Evelyn nodded, her shoulders relaxing just slightly. She hadn't realized how tense she was until that moment. A child in the picture changed things, made this feel less dangerous, more real. They drove in silence for a while. The city moved differently from inside his truck. Smaller, somehow. Less distant. Street lights blurred into streaks of yellow against the windshield. Snow swirled in chaotic patterns, catching in the glow of passing headlights. Evelyn watched it all, trying to make sense of the shift happening inside her. 2 hours ago, she had everything. Now she was sitting in a stranger's truck, heading to a place she'd never seen, with no plan and no control. And strangely, she wasn't panicking. "You can change your mind," Marcus said suddenly. She turned her head slightly. "What?" "I can drop you at a hotel, shelter, somewhere else," he said. "You don't have to come with me." Evelyn stared at him. His eyes stayed on the road. No pressure, no expectation, just an option. "I don't have anywhere else to go," she admitted before she could stop herself. The truth slipped out, raw, unfiltered. She expected a reaction, a question, a look, something. But Marcus just nodded. "All right," he said quietly. "Then we keep going." That was it. No follow-up, no digging. Evelyn felt something twist in her chest. In her world, everything came with questions. Where are you from? What do you do? Who do you know? What are you worth? Information was currency, control, power. And here, none of that seemed to matter. The truck turned into a quieter part of the city. The buildings changed. Tall glass towers gave way to smaller houses, brick, wood, fences leaning slightly, yards dusted with uneven snow. Lights glowed warm behind windows. People lived here. Not perfectly, but honestly. Marcus pulled into a narrow driveway in front of a modest 2-story house with blue shutters and a porch that sagged just a little on one side. He killed the engine. The silence that followed felt different, not empty, just still. "Home," he said. Evelyn didn't move. Her eyes traced the outline of the house, taking in every detail. It wasn't impressive, it wasn't grand, but it felt alive. Marcus stepped out and came around to her side, opening the door carefully. "Same question," he said. "You want help, or you got it?" Evelyn looked at him, at the patience in his posture, the quiet respect. "I'll need the chair," she said. "Got it." He moved quickly, pulling the wheelchair from the back and setting it up beside her. Evelyn transferred again, her movements slower this time, her body still adjusting to the warmth after the cold. When she settled into the chair, she looked up. A wooden ramp led from the driveway to the porch. Rough edges, hand-built. "Folksha, you built that?" she asked. Marcus followed her gaze. "Yeah," he said. "For my mom. She had a stroke a few years back." He paused, then added, "She passed last year." Evelyn didn't know what to say. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. He shrugged slightly. "It is what it is." But something in his voice said it wasn't that simple. Evelyn nodded. "Thank you for keeping it." He looked back at her, surprised. "Figured someone might need it someday," he said. The words hung in the air. Evelyn felt them settle somewhere deep. Someone might need it someday. Tonight. That someone was her. Marcus pushed the chair gently up the ramp. The wood creaked under the weight, but it held. The porch light flicked on, casting a soft yellow glow across the door. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a set of keys, and unlocked it. Warm air spilled out. Not just heat. Life. He stepped aside, gesturing her in. "Come on," he said. Evelyn hesitated for just a second, standing on the threshold of a stranger's home. A life she didn't understand. A world she had never imagined stepping into. Then she rolled forward. Inside. The door closed behind her with a soft click. And just like that, the storm was left outside. But something told her the real storm in her life was just beginning. The warmth hit her first. Not the sharp, artificial heat of a luxury building's climate control system, but something softer, uneven, real. It wrapped around her like a worn blanket, carrying the faint scent of coffee, laundry detergent, and something homemade. Evelyn paused just inside the doorway. The house was small. That was her first thought. Not small in a calculated, minimalist way. Not curated, not designed to impress. Just small. But it was full. The kitchen light was on, casting a golden glow across a narrow hallway. A pair of tiny sneakers sat by the door, one tipped on its side. Drawings, crayon, bright and messy, were taped unevenly to the refrigerator she could see from where she sat. Stick figures, smiling faces, a house with a crooked roof and a giant sun in the corner. Evelyn's chest tightened unexpectedly. "Watch the lip," Marcus said behind her, nudging the chair gently over the small threshold. She rolled forward slowly, taking it all in. No marble floors, no towering ceilings, no echo. Everything here felt close, alive. Marcus shut the door behind them, locking out the wind completely. The silence that followed was thick, but not empty. It was filled with the subtle sounds of a lived-in space. The hum of a refrigerator, the faint creak of wood, the distant ticking of a clock somewhere down the hall. "You hungry?" Marcus asked, already moving toward the kitchen. Evelyn opened her mouth to say no. Her stomach answered for her, a low, unmistakable growl. Marcus glanced back, one eyebrow raised. "I'll take that as a yes." She looked away, heat creeping into her face. "I'm fine with whatever," she said quietly. "Grilled cheese okay?" he asked. Evelyn blinked. "I haven't had that in years." "Then you're overdue." He moved with quiet efficiency, pulling a pan from the cabinet, butter from the fridge. The movements were practiced, not rushed, not hesitant, comfortable. Evelyn wheeled herself a little farther into the room, her eyes drifting over the details. A chipped mug sat on the counter. "World's okayest dad," printed in faded letters. A stack of mail sat unopened near the edge, held down by a small plastic toy shaped like a dinosaur. Nothing matched. Nothing was perfect, but everything belonged. She couldn't remember the last time she'd been in a place like this. A place that didn't feel like a showroom. A place that wasn't designed to be seen, just lived in. "You can use that room," Marcus said, nodding toward a door down the short hallway. "Bathroom's right across from it. Towels are in the cabinet." Evelyn followed his gesture. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, she could see a simple bed, a quilt folded neatly across the top, a small dresser by the window. No luxury, no excess, just enough. "Thank you," she said, the words feeling heavier than they should have. Marcus just nodded, flipping the sandwich in the pan. The sizzle of butter filled the space, warm and familiar. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "It's just a room." It wasn't just a room. Evelyn knew that, but she didn't argue. She wheeled herself into the spare room, pushing the door open wider. The air inside was cooler, quieter. The bed was neatly made, the quilt slightly worn at the edges. A small lamp sat on the nightstand, its light soft and yellow. Through the window she could see the snow still falling, blanketing the backyard in white. For a moment, she just sat there, listening to the faint sounds of Marcus moving in the kitchen, to the quiet hum of the house settling around her. No voices echoing down long hallways, no footsteps of staff moving through distant rooms, no pressure, no expectations, just space. Evelyn transferred onto the bed slowly, her arms straining slightly with the effort. When she finally settled back against the pillows, she let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. The mattress dipped slightly under her weight. It wasn't perfect, but it was soft, real. She stared at the ceiling, white, slightly uneven, nothing like the polished perfection she was used to, and yet it felt more honest. A knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Food's ready," Marcus said. Evelyn pushed herself back into the chair and rolled out into the hallway. The smell hit her immediately. Butter, toasted bread, melted cheese, simple, but somehow irresistible. Marcus had set 2 plates on the small kitchen table. The sandwiches were cut into triangles. For a second, Evelyn just stood there, looking at them, at him. "You didn't have to—" "I know," he said, pulling out a chair. "Sit." She rolled up to the table, adjusting her position slightly. The first bite was perfect, crisp on the outside, warm melted cheese on the inside. Evelyn closed her eyes for a second, letting the taste settle. When she opened them, Marcus was watching her. Not in a way that made her uncomfortable, just curious. "Good?" he asked. She nodded. "Yeah," she said softly. "It is." They ate in silence for a few minutes. Not awkward, not forced, just quiet. Evelyn realized something strange. She wasn't performing. She wasn't thinking about how she looked, what she said, what impression she was making. She was just eating, being. It felt foreign. It felt dangerous. "Want another?" Marcus asked, gesturing to the half of his sandwich still on his plate. "No," she said quickly. "This is enough." He didn't push, just nodded and kept eating. After a while, he stood, gathering the plates. "I'll clean up," he said. Evelyn watched him move around the kitchen, rinsing dishes, stacking them neatly. "You don't have a dishwasher?" she asked. "Broke last year," he said. "Haven't gotten around to fixing it." "You could just replace it." He shrugged. "Got other things to spend money on." Evelyn didn't ask what. She didn't need to. She could see it in the house, in the details, in the life he was building. Marcus dried his hands and leaned back against the counter, crossing his arms loosely. "You can stay as long as you need," he said. Evelyn looked up. "What?" "The room," he clarified. "No time limit, no pressure." She stared at him. "You don't even know me." He met her gaze evenly. "Do you want me to?" The question caught her off guard. What?" "Do you want to talk about it?" he asked. "Whatever got you out there tonight?" Evelyn felt something tighten in her chest. The answer came automatically. "No." Marcus nodded. "Then we don't talk about it." That was it. No pushing, no curiosity disguised as concern, just acceptance. Evelyn looked down at her hands, still wrapped loosely around the edge of the table. "I was engaged," she said suddenly. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Marcus didn't react, just listened. "He left me tonight," she continued, her voice steady but thin. "Said he didn't sign up for this." She gestured vaguely at the wheelchair. Marcus's jaw tightened slightly. "He's an idiot," he said. Evelyn let out a short, humorless laugh. "My father agreed with him." Marcus pushed off the counter slightly, his expression shifting. "Sounds like you've been surrounded by idiots." Evelyn looked up at him. Really looked. There was no hesitation in his voice, no calculation, just certainty. And for some reason, that hit harder than anything else. "I built his company," she said quietly. "Everything he has. I built it." Marcus nodded once. "And?" "And the second I couldn't perform, I became a liability." The word hung in the air, cold, clinical. Marcus shook his head slowly. "That's not how people work," he said. "It is in my world." "Then your world's broken." Evelyn stared at him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, quietly, "You don't know anything about my world." "No," Marcus said. "But I know enough to know it's not worth freezing to death over." The simplicity of it cut through everything. Evelyn felt something crack, just a little. She looked away quickly, blinking hard. "I'm not staying long," she said. "Okay, I'll figure something out tomorrow." "Okay, I don't want to be a burden." Marcus's expression softened slightly. "You're not," he said. Evelyn didn't respond, because she didn't believe him. Not yet. But as she sat there, in a small kitchen that smelled like butter and coffee, in a house that felt more real than anything she'd known, for the first time in a long time, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to fight alone tonight. And that thought scared her more than the cold ever had. Evelyn didn't sleep much that night. The house had gone quiet hours ago, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound breaking through the stillness. Snow continued to fall outside, tapping gently against the window like a distant whisper she couldn't quite ignore. She lay on her back, staring at the ceiling. Her mind refused to slow down. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw it again. The door of the car slamming shut, the look on her fiancé's face, the message from her father. Final, cold, clean, as if she had never mattered at all. She shifted slightly, wincing as her body adjusted on the unfamiliar mattress. Even the smallest movements reminded her of what she had lost. Not just her company, her home, her status, but control. And for someone like Evelyn Carter, control had been everything. A faint sound down the hallway broke her thoughts. Soft footsteps, light, careful. A door creaked open, followed by a small voice, barely above a whisper. "Daddy?" Evelyn held her breath. Marcus's voice came next, low and gentle. "I'm here, baby. I had a bad dream." A pause, then the quiet shuffle of movement like someone kneeling. "It's okay," Marcus said softly. "You're safe." Evelyn turned her head slightly toward the door, listening despite herself. "I saw monsters," the little voice continued. "They're not real." "They felt real." There was a moment of silence. Then Marcus spoke again, his tone steady, calm. "Hey, look at me. You remember what we talked about?" A sniffle. "What?" "That even when things feel scary, it doesn't mean they can hurt you. Feelings aren't facts." Evelyn blinked. The words hit something inside her. "Feelings aren't facts," Marcus repeated gently. Another pause. Then, "Can I sleep in your room?" Evelyn waited. Expected hesitation. Expected boundaries. But Marcus didn't miss a beat. "Of course you can." A soft giggle followed. Footsteps padded down the hallway, lighter now, more relaxed. A door closed. Silence returned. But something had shifted. Evelyn stared at the ceiling again, her thoughts no longer racing the same way. Feelings aren't facts. She let the words roll through her mind slowly. Because if that was true, then maybe the fear gripping her chest wasn't the truth. Maybe the voice telling her she was finished, wrong, disposable, wasn't real. Or at least, wasn't permanent. She exhaled slowly. For the first time since the storm began, her breathing steadied. Morning came quietly. A soft gray light filtered through the curtains, reflecting off the snow outside. The world looked untouched, almost peaceful, as if the chaos of the night before had been erased. Evelyn woke to the smell of coffee. Real coffee. Strong. She pushed herself upright, her muscles sore but responsive, and reached for the chair. The movement felt slightly easier today. Not effortless, but possible. She rolled into the hallway. The house was alive again. Laughter echoed from the kitchen. Bright, unfiltered. She paused at the doorway. Marcus stood at the stove, flipping pancakes with practiced ease. His back was to her, shoulders relaxed, movements steady. At the small table sat a little girl, no older than 6, swinging her legs under the chair, her hair tied into 2 uneven puffs. "Daddy, you burned it again," she announced dramatically. "I did not burn it," Marcus replied without turning around. "I added character." "It's black," she insisted. "That's flavor." The girl giggled. Evelyn felt something warm spread through her chest. Not sharp, not overwhelming, just unfamiliar. Marcus turned slightly, catching sight of her. "Morning," he said. The girl spun around in her chair. Her eyes widened. "Oh," she said, her voice full of curiosity, not fear. "You're the lady from the snow!" Evelyn hesitated, then nodded slightly. "Yes, I'm Lily," the girl said proudly. Evelyn gave a small smile. "I'm Evelyn." Lily tilted her head. "You look sad." The bluntness caught her off guard. Evelyn started. "Lily," Marcus interrupted gently. "We don't say things like that." "It's okay," Evelyn said quietly, "because somehow it was." She rolled forward slowly, stopping near the table. Lily watched her openly, her curiosity pure, untouched by judgment. "Does it hurt?" she asked. Evelyn glanced down at her legs. "Sometimes." Lily nodded seriously, as if filing the information away. "My knee hurt when I fell at school," she said, "but it got better." Evelyn swallowed. "I'm glad it did." Marcus set a plate in front of Evelyn. Pancakes. Simple. Warm. "Eat," he said. She looked up at him. "Thank you." He shrugged. "You're here. You eat. No conditions, no expectations, just fact." Evelyn picked up the fork slowly. The first bite tasted like something she couldn't name. Not just food. Something else. Something she hadn't felt in a long time. That's approached slightly. "Are you staying?" she asked. Evelyn hesitated. "I don't know." Lily frowned. "You should." Marcus shot her a look. "Lily, what?" she said. "She looks like she needs somewhere to stay." Evelyn let out a small breath. The honesty in the room. It was disarming. After breakfast, Marcus cleaned up quickly while Lily disappeared into another room, humming to herself. Evelyn lingered near the table, watching, thinking. "You don't have to stay quiet," Marcus said without turning around. "House isn't that scary." Evelyn let out a faint smile. "I'm just not used to this." "To what?" She looked around. The small kitchen, the worn furniture, the sunlight hitting the counter just right. "People," she said simply. Marcus dried his hands and leaned against the counter. "Yeah," he said. People can be a lot. Evelyn shook her head. No, I mean, real people. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. Yeah, he said again, softer this time. They can be that too. There was a pause. Not uncomfortable, just honest. Evelyn looked at him. Why are you doing this? Marcus didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked over to the window, looking out at the snow-covered yard. Because I've been where you are, he said finally. Evelyn frowned slightly. No, you haven't. He glanced back at her. You sure about that? She hesitated. Marcus exhaled slowly. My wife got sick, he said. Hospital messed up her treatment. Evelyn's chest tightened. She didn't make it. The words landed heavy, simple, unadorned. I tried to fight it, he continued. Lawyers, complaints, all of it. And? Marcus gave a small, humorless smile. They buried me in paperwork and silence. Evelyn felt something shift inside her. Then I lost my job, he added. Too many missed shifts, too many distractions. He used his fingers to quote the last word. After that, it was just me and Lily. Evelyn swallowed. The picture became clearer. Not just kindness, not just generosity, understanding, real, pain. You didn't deserve that, she said quietly. Marcus shrugged. Doesn't matter what I deserved. He looked at her again. What matters is what I do next. The words settled between them. Heavy, true. Evelyn looked down at her hands. For the first time, she saw something familiar. Not in their situations, but in the aftermath. Loss, powerlessness, being discarded by systems that didn't care. Two different worlds, same ending. Feels like we both got erased, she said softly. Marcus nodded once. Yeah. A long silence followed, but it wasn't empty. It was filled with something new, something forming. Not trust, not yet, but something close. And as Evelyn sat there, in a small kitchen she never would have entered just days ago, she realized something she hadn't expected. Maybe, just maybe, losing everything had brought her to the only place where she could finally be seen. And that thought, for the first time, didn't scare her. It steadied her. For the first time in a long time, Evelyn Carter didn't feel like she was drifting. There was no boardroom waiting for her approval. No endless stream of emails demanding decisions. No polished floors beneath her heels or assistants hovering just out of sight. Just a quiet house, a chipped kitchen counter, and a man who spoke the truth without trying to impress her. It should have felt small, but it didn't. It felt real. That afternoon, the snow finally stopped. Sunlight broke through the gray sky, casting long golden beams across the neighborhood. The street outside Marcus's house came alive again. Kids bundled in thick coats ran through piles of snow, their laughter echoing against brick buildings. Cars crept along slowly, tires crunching over ice. Evelyn sat near the window, wrapped in a blanket, watching it all unfold. She hadn't seen life like this in years. Unfiltered, unpolished, uncontrolled. Behind her, Marcus moved quietly, pulling on his coat. I gotta step out for a bit, he said. Pick up a few things. Evelyn turned slightly. You need help? The words surprised even her. Marcus raised an eyebrow, a faint smile tugging at his lips. You offering? She hesitated, then nodded. I can come with you. He studied her for a moment, not judging, just making sure. You sure? Evelyn glanced down at her chair, then back at him. No, she said honestly. But I don't think staying here is going to fix that. Something in Marcus's expression softened. All right, he said. Let's go. The cold air hit her face the moment they stepped outside. Sharp, clean, alive. Marcus helped guide her carefully down the small front steps, his movements steady but never forceful. He didn't rush her, didn't make it feel like she was a burden. The neighborhood felt different from the inside of the house, closer, louder. Eyes followed them as they moved down the sidewalk, some curious, some cautious, some not subtle at all. Evelyn felt it immediately, the shift, the judgment. A woman in a wheelchair, dressed in clothes that didn't quite belong to this place, beside a black man pushing her through a working-class street. It didn't fit the picture people expected, and they noticed. A group of men standing near a corner store fell silent as they passed. One of them muttered something under his breath. Evelyn couldn't hear the words, but she didn't need to. Marcus didn't react. He just kept walking, steady, unbothered. But Evelyn noticed the slight tightening in his jaw, the way his shoulders squared just a little more. She had seen this before. Not like this, but in boardrooms, in subtle glances, in decisions made behind closed doors. Except here, it wasn't subtle. It was direct, unfiltered, and it made her chest tighten. They reached a small grocery store on the corner. The bell above the door chimed as they entered. Warm air wrapped around them instantly. The smell of coffee and bread filled the space. It felt safe, at least for a moment. Marcus grabbed a basket and moved through the aisles with quiet efficiency. Milk, bread, a few canned goods. Nothing excessive, nothing wasted. Evelyn watched him carefully. This wasn't survival by chance. This was practiced, measured, intentional. At the register, the cashier barely looked up, until she did. Her eyes flicked from Marcus to Evelyn, then back again. A pause, too long to be polite, not long enough to be called out. "You paying together?" she asked. Marcus's voice stayed calm. "Yeah." The woman hesitated, then rang up the items. Evelyn felt something twist inside her. It wasn't the question. It was the tone, the assumption behind it, the quiet suspicion. For the first time, she wasn't standing above it. She was inside it. And it didn't feel abstract anymore. It felt personal. They stepped back outside. The sunlight didn't feel as warm now. Halfway down the block, a voice called out behind them. "Marcus!" He stopped, turned. A woman approached quickly, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement despite the snow. She was dressed sharply, her coat pristine, her expression tight with disapproval. Lily's grandmother. Evelyn recognized her immediately from the photo on the living room shelf. "You didn't answer my calls," the woman said, her voice clipped. "I've been busy," Marcus replied. Her eyes shifted to Evelyn, and in that single glance, Evelyn felt it. Judgment, cold, immediate. "Who is this?" the woman asked. Marcus's grip on the wheelchair tightened slightly. "She's a friend." The woman's lips pressed into a thin line. "A friend," she repeated. Her gaze lingered on Evelyn's chair, then her clothes, then her face, as if trying to place her or categorize her. "I didn't know you had time for friends," she said sharply, "considering your situation." Marcus's voice stayed even. "My situation is handled." "Is it?" she shot back. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're bringing strangers into your home while my granddaughter is under your care." Evelyn's chest tightened. She opened her mouth, then closed it. This wasn't her place, but it was happening because of her. "I know what I'm doing," Marcus said. The woman stepped closer, lowered her voice slightly. "I'm filing for custody." The words landed like ice. Marcus didn't flinch, but Evelyn felt it. The shift, the tension tightening around them. "You do what you think you need to do," Marcus replied calmly. "Oh, I will," she said. "Because Lily deserves stability, not this." Her eyes flicked to Evelyn again. This. Evelyn felt something crack inside her. Not anger, Not yet. Something heavier. Guilt. The woman turned and walked away without another word, her heels echoing down the street. Marcus stood still for a moment, then exhaled slowly. "You okay?" he asked, without looking at Evelyn. She swallowed. "No," she said quietly. Neither was he. They didn't speak the rest of the way home, but the silence wasn't empty anymore. It was heavy, loaded. By the time they stepped back inside the house, the warmth felt different, thinner, fragile. Lily ran into the room, smiling. "Daddy, look what I drew!" She stopped when she saw their faces. Her smile faded slightly. "What happened?" Marcus forced a small smile.
"Nothing, baby."
But Evelyn knew better, because for the first time since she arrived, she realized something she hadn't wanted to admit. Her presence here wasn't just changing her life, it was putting theirs at risk. And as she sat there, the weight of that truth pressing down on her, a single thought began to form. Quiet. Terrifying. Maybe the kindest thing she could do was leave. The thought stayed with Evelyn long after the house had gone quiet. It sat in her chest like a weight she couldn't shift, growing heavier with every passing hour. Lily had gone to bed early, her usual laughter replaced by silence after sensing something was wrong. Marcus had said little, moving through the evening with that same quiet strength, but Evelyn could feel it now. The pressure, the cracks forming beneath something fragile. And she was at the center of it. That night, Evelyn packed what little she had. It didn't take long. A borrowed sweater, a spare pair of pants Marcus had found for her. The blanket Lily had insisted she keep. She folded it carefully, her hands slower than usual, more deliberate, as if stretching time, as if hoping something would stop her. But nothing did. The house stayed silent. And so, just before dawn, Evelyn rolled herself toward the front door. The sky outside was still dark, a deep blue stretching over the quiet street. Snow crunched faintly beneath her wheels as she pushed herself forward, each movement sending a dull ache through her arms. She didn't look back, because she knew, if she did, she wouldn't leave. The cold air wrapped around her again, sharper this time, less forgiving. She kept going, block after block, until the warmth of that small house faded behind her, and she was alone, again, just like before. But this time, it hurt more. The courthouse stood tall against the gray morning sky, cold, imposing, unmoved by the lives passing through its doors. Marcus sat in the waiting area, his hands clasped tightly together. Across the room, Lily swung her legs nervously, her small fingers gripping the edge of the bench. She didn't fully understand what was happening, but she knew enough to be afraid. "Daddy," she whispered, "is Grandma taking me away?" Marcus leaned down, his voice steady despite the tension tightening in his chest. "No," he said softly. "Nobody's taking you anywhere." But even as he said it, he wasn't sure. The doors opened. Lily's grandmother stepped in, her posture straight, her expression calm in a way that felt practiced. Behind her walked a man in a tailored suit, carrying a briefcase. Her lawyer. Marcus straightened slightly. The fight had begun. Inside the courtroom, everything felt too quiet, too controlled. The kind of quiet that made every word heavier. Marcus sat at one table. Across from him, Lily's grandmother sat with her lawyer, whispering quietly as they reviewed documents. "Mr. Reed," the judge said, adjusting her glasses. "This hearing is to determine temporary custody arrangements for the minor, Lily Reed." Marcus nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." The lawyer stood. "Your Honor," he began smoothly, "we have concerns regarding Mr. Reed's ability to provide a stable environment for the child." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Here it comes." The lawyer continued. "In recent weeks, Mr. Reed has missed multiple work shifts, jeopardizing his employment. Additionally, he has introduced an unknown individual into his home, a woman with no verifiable background, no financial stability, and significant medical needs." Each word felt like a deliberate strike, calculated, clean. "And we believe," the lawyer added, "that this environment may not be in the best interest of the child." Marcus exhaled slowly. He had expected this, but hearing it out loud was different. It wasn't just an argument. It was a dismantling, piece by piece. "Mr. Reed," the judge said, "would you like to respond?" Marcus stood. His voice didn't rise, didn't shake. "I take care of my daughter," he said. "Every day, I make sure she's safe, fed, loved." He glanced briefly at Lily. She watched him with wide eyes. "I made mistakes," he admitted. "Missed work, yeah, but not because I don't care. Because I was trying to help someone who needed it." The lawyer smirked slightly. "And that someone," he said, "is not even present today." The words landed harder than expected. Marcus paused. Because he didn't know where Evelyn was. Because she was gone. And for a brief moment, everything felt like it was slipping. "Exactly," the lawyer continued. "This individual appears to have come and gone without accountability. And yet, during her presence, Mr. Reed's responsibilities were compromised." Marcus clenched his hands. "This isn't about her," he said. "No," the lawyer replied smoothly. "This is about your judgment." Silence filled the room, heavy, unforgiving. Then, a small voice broke through. "They're lying." Every head turned. Lily stood, her tiny hands trembling slightly at her sides.
Lily, Marcus started, but she didn't sit down.
"They're lying," she repeated, louder this time. The judge leaned forward slightly. "Lily," she said gently, "you don't have to." "I want to," Lily insisted. Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. "My dad is good," she said. "He helps people. He helped that lady when nobody else did." The courtroom went still. "She was cold," Lily continued, "and scared. And he didn't leave her." Her eyes filled with tears. "Everyone else leaves," she said quietly. The words hung in the air, raw, unfiltered. "And he didn't," she whispered. Marcus swallowed hard. Lily looked at the judge. "They're my family," she said. 3 words, simple, but they hit harder than anything the lawyers had said. Silence followed, long, heavy, the kind that shifted something invisible in the room. The judge exhaled slowly, then looked down at her notes. "Given the circumstances," she said carefully, "the court will take this matter under advisement. A final decision will be made after further review. Not a win, not a loss."
But not over. Not yet.
Outside the courthouse, the cold air returned. Marcus crouched down in front of Lily, pulling her into a tight hug. "You were brave," he said. She sniffled. "I didn't want to leave you." "You're not leaving me," he whispered. But the uncertainty lingered, because he didn't know if that was true. And as they stepped away from the courthouse, into a world that suddenly felt heavier than before, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. That someone was missing. Because in the moment he needed her most, Evelyn Carter was gone, and he didn't know why, or if she would ever come back. The silence in the house that night felt different. Not peaceful, not calm, empty. Marcus sat at the kitchen table long after Lily had gone to bed, the same chair Evelyn had used still slightly pushed back, as if she had only stepped away for a moment. But she hadn't. Her blanket was gone. The cup she used had been washed and placed neatly beside the others. No note, no explanation, just absence. Marcus leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, his hands clasped together. He stared at the surface without really seeing it. He had seen people leave before. His wife, friends who slowly disappeared after things got hard, employers who stopped calling. But this felt different, because Evelyn hadn't just walked away from comfort. She had walked away from the only place she was safe. And that didn't make sense. Unless She thought she didn't belong there. The realization hit quietly, heavy. Marcus exhaled slowly. Across the hall, Lily's bedroom door creaked open. Small footsteps approached. "Daddy?" He looked up. She stood there in her pajamas, clutching a stuffed bear, her eyes searching his face. "Is she gone?" she asked softly. Marcus hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah." Lily's shoulders dropped. "Did we do something wrong?" The question cut deeper than anything in the courtroom had. Marcus stood quickly, crossing the room and kneeling in front of her. "No," he said firmly. "No, baby, you didn't do anything wrong." "Then why did she leave?" He didn't have an answer. At least, not one he could explain. "Sometimes," he said carefully, "people leave because they think it's the right thing to do." Lily frowned. "But it wasn't." Marcus swallowed. "No," he admitted quietly. "It wasn't." She leaned into him, wrapping her arms around his neck. "I liked her," she whispered. "I know." He held her tighter. "I did too." The next morning came too fast. Reality didn't wait for grief to settle. Marcus stood outside his workplace, a small maintenance company on the edge of the city, staring at the door before stepping inside. The air smelled like oil and dust. Familiar, usually grounding. Today, heavy. His supervisor stood near the counter, arms crossed. "You're late again," he said flatly. Marcus nodded. "I know." The man sighed, shaking his head. "You missed 3 shifts this week, Marcus." I know what you had," the supervisor cut in. "And I told you personal stuff doesn't come before the job." Marcus clenched his jaw. "I was helping someone who—" "Exactly," the man interrupted. "Someone. Not your responsibility." Marcus felt the words settle into something sharp. Because that was the difference. To him, it had been responsibility, human, necessary. But here, it was a liability. "We can't run a business like this," the supervisor continued. "I need people I can count on." Marcus nodded slowly. He had heard this before. Different places, same message. "You're a good worker," the man added, his tone softening slightly. "But right now, I need reliable." There it was, the quiet ending. Marcus exhaled once. Understood. He didn't argue, didn't beg, just turned and walked out. The cold hit him again as he stepped outside, but it didn't feel as sharp as it had days ago. Maybe because now, the cold wasn't just outside, it was everywhere. By the time he got home, the sun had already dipped behind the buildings, casting long shadows across the street. Inside, Lily sat at the table, drawing. She looked up as he entered. "Did you get groceries?" Marcus paused, then shook his head slightly. "Not today." She nodded, as if trying to understand something bigger than her years allowed. "Okay," he forced a smile. "I'll figure something out." But even as he said it, he wasn't sure how. Across the city, Evelyn sat in a dimly lit corner of a hospital waiting room. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead. People moved in and out, their faces tired, distant, disconnected. She had been there for hours. Not because she needed treatment, but because it was the only place no one questioned her presence. No one asked where she came from or where she was going. She stared down at her hands, her fingers tracing invisible patterns against her skin. She had made the choice. She had left. Because it was the right thing. Because staying would have made everything worse for them. But now, sitting alone in a place that smelled like antiseptic and exhaustion, she felt something she hadn't expected. Not relief. Regret. A nurse passed by, glancing at her briefly before continuing on. Evelyn shifted slightly in her chair, her body aching from hours of stillness. Her mind replayed the last look she had seen on Lily's face, the confusion, the quiet hurt. And Marcus, the way he hadn't tried to stop her, not because he didn't care, but because he respected her choice, even when it hurt him. Evelyn closed her eyes. Her chest tightened. She had spent her entire life making decisions that benefited her position, her company, her future. Calculated, strategic, safe. But this wasn't strategy. This was fear disguised as sacrifice. And for the first time, she wasn't sure she had made the right call. Back at the house, Marcus sat at the table again. Same position, same silence. But now the weight felt heavier, because it wasn't just about him anymore. It was about Lily, about what came next. The phone on the table buzzed suddenly. He looked down. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. Hello? A pause. Then a familiar voice. Cold, controlled. Evelyn. Marcus froze. His grip tightened around the phone. What? She's with you, isn't she? The voice continued. Marcus's eyes narrowed. No. Another pause. Longer this time. If she contacts you, the voice said, you will inform me immediately. Marcus leaned back slightly. And who are you? The voice didn't answer the question. Instead, she belongs where she was, not where you are. The line went dead. Marcus stared at the phone. His chest tightened, because suddenly, this wasn't just about kindness anymore. This wasn't just about helping someone in need. There was something bigger, something hidden, and whatever it was, it had just stepped into his life. At the same moment, across the city, Evelyn opened her eyes, and for the first time since she left, she felt it. Not fear, not regret, something sharper, clearer, a realization cutting through everything else. Running away hadn't protected them. It had only made things worse. And if she stayed gone, they would keep paying the price. Evelyn gripped the arms of her chair. Her heart began to race. Because suddenly, she understood something she hadn't before. This wasn't over, not even close. And the life she thought she had left behind was already reaching back for her. The hospital doors slid open with a soft mechanical hiss as Evelyn pushed herself outside. The cold hit her again, but this time she didn't flinch. Chicago stretched out in front of her, gray, restless, unforgiving, but no longer distant. No longer something happening around her. Now it was pulling her back in. A black sedan idled across the street. She noticed it immediately. Too clean, too still, too familiar. The window rolled down slowly. A man stepped out. Tailored coat, polished shoes, no expression. Miss Carter, he said calmly. Evelyn didn't respond. I've been asked to bring you home. Home. The word landed like something foreign. I don't have a home, she said quietly. The man didn't react. Your father disagrees. Of course he did. Evelyn let out a slow breath. My father doesn't get to decide that anymore. The man stepped closer. Not threatening, just certain. The company is collapsing. That made her look up. For the first time, real interest flickered across her face. What? He nodded slightly. Stock has dropped 23% in 48 hours. Board members are pulling out. Investors are preparing to cut their losses. Evelyn's chest tightened. The numbers hit her like muscle memory. Fast, precise, real. They need you, he added. Evelyn almost laughed. A hollow sound. They fired me. They removed you, the man corrected. There's a difference. She shook her head. No, there isn't. There is, he said calmly, because now they're asking for you back. Silence stretched between them. Snow crunched under a passing car. A siren echoed faintly in the distance. Evelyn stared at him, because for the first time since everything had fallen apart, something old stirred inside her. Control, power, possibility. You're offering me my life back, she said slowly. The man met her gaze. Yes. And there it was, clear, simple, tempting. Everything she had lost, handed back to her. Her company, her name, her place in the world. All she had to do was say yes. Evelyn looked down at her hands. For a moment she could almost feel it again. The smooth surface of her office desk, the weight of decisions, the authority in her voice. She had built that life, fought for it, controlled it, and now it was within reach again. But something didn't sit right. Not anymore. Because now there was something else in the equation. Marcus, Lily, that small kitchen, that quiet warmth, that feeling she hadn't known how to name. And suddenly, the offer didn't feel as simple as it should have. "What's the condition?" she asked. The man didn't hesitate. "You return immediately, resume control, stabilize the company. And," he paused, just for a second, "you cut all external ties." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said carefully, "you return to the environment where you belong, without distractions." There it was, clear now, cold, calculated. "They don't want me connected to people like Marcus," she said. The man didn't respond. He didn't need to. Evelyn leaned back slightly in her chair. The pieces fell into place quickly, too quickly. This wasn't just about business. This was about image, control, keeping things clean, predictable, safe. The kind of world she used to operate in before everything broke. "And if I say no?" she asked. The man's expression didn't change. "Then the company falls." Evelyn held his gaze. "And Marcus?" A flicker, barely visible, but there. "He will no longer be involved," the man said. That wasn't an answer, not really, but it was enough. Evelyn exhaled slowly, because suddenly this wasn't about choosing between two lives. It was about choosing who she had become. The woman who built an empire, or the woman who sat at a small kitchen table and felt seen for the first time. She closed her eyes, just for a second, and in that moment, she saw Lily, standing in that courtroom. "They're my family." 3 words, simple, but they had changed everything. Evelyn opened her eyes. "They're already paying the price for me leaving," she said quietly. The man tilted his head slightly. "I don't understand." "No," she said, "you don't. Because people like him, like her old world, never did. They didn't understand what it meant to stay, to choose people over position, to risk something real." Evelyn gripped the wheels of her chair, her heart steady now, her mind clear. "I'll come back," she said. The man nodded once, as if expecting it. "But not like before," she added. He paused. "What does that mean?" "It means I set the terms." The first crack appeared in his composure, small, but there. "That's not how this works." Evelyn smiled slightly. For the first time, not out of politeness, out of certainty. "It is now." She leaned forward just enough to make her point unmistakable. "You want me to save your company?" she said. "Then you invest in someone who actually deserves it." The man's brow furrowed. "Who?" Evelyn didn't hesitate. "Marcus Reed." The name hung in the air. Unexpected. Unwelcome. "Why?" he asked. Evelyn's voice didn't waver. "Because he builds things that matter. Not numbers, not projections, not illusions. Real things. Lives, people, second chances." The man shook his head slightly. "That's not a sound investment." Evelyn's eyes locked onto his. "Neither was throwing me away." Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. The power had shifted. Slowly, but completely. "Tell my father," she continued, "I'll fix his company." She paused, then added, "But I don't belong to it anymore." The wind picked up slightly, sending a swirl of snow across the pavement. The man stood still, processing, adjusting. Because this wasn't the woman they had expected to find, not the one they had removed. This one was different, stronger, clearer, and no longer alone. Evelyn turned her chair, facing the street, facing the direction she had come from, because now she knew exactly where she was going. Back, not to reclaim what she lost, but to protect what she had found. And for the first time, the choice didn't feel like a sacrifice. It felt like truth. The black sedan cut through downtown Chicago like a blade through glass. Evelyn sat in the back seat, her hands resting lightly on her lap, her posture straight, not forced, not rehearsed, but natural. The city outside blurred past in streaks of gray steel and reflected light, skyscrapers rising like silent witnesses to everything she had once ruled and everything she had lost. But this time, she wasn't returning to reclaim it. She was returning to rewrite it. The Carter Industries headquarters loomed ahead, towering and immaculate. Its glass facade reflected the winter sky, cold and untouchable. Once it had felt like home. Now, it looked like something else entirely. A machine. As the car pulled to a stop, the driver stepped out quickly, moving to open the door. Evelyn didn't wait. She reached for the handle herself, pushing it open, her chair already positioned. She rolled forward. Alone. The lobby fell silent the moment she entered. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Footsteps slowed. Eyes followed her, some wide with disbelief, others calculating, others uneasy. Because the woman they had pushed out had just walked back in. And she didn't look broken. She looked certain. "Ms. Carter?" a voice called, tight with forced composure. Evelyn didn't stop, didn't turn. "Both boardroom," she said calmly. "Now." The command wasn't loud, but it carried. Because authority, real authority, never needed volume. Minutes later, the boardroom doors closed behind her with a soft but final click. The same table, the same chairs, the same people who had signed the papers that erased her. They sat straighter now, careful, watching her. Her father stood at the far end of the table, William Carter. Sharp suit, silver hair, eyes that had built an empire and broken it just as easily. "You came back," he said. Evelyn rolled forward slowly, positioning herself at the head of the table. "I said I would." Her voice didn't waver, didn't carry emotion, just fact. William studied her. "This situation is temporary," he said. "Once stability is restored—" "No," Evelyn interrupted. The word landed like a quiet explosion. The room stilled, because she had never interrupted him before. Not like that. "Let's be clear," she continued, her gaze sweeping across the table. "You don't get to define the terms anymore." A flicker of irritation crossed William's face. "You seem to forget I remember everything," she said sharply. Silence. Thick. Uncomfortable. Evelyn leaned forward slightly. "You removed me," she said. "You underestimated me, and now your company's collapsing without me." No one spoke, because no one could deny it. She let the moment sit. Then, "You want me to fix it," she continued. "Fine. I will." A small shift of relief moved through the room. Too early, because she wasn't done. "But we do it my way." William's jaw tightened. "And what exactly does that mean?" Evelyn met his gaze. Steady. Unflinching. "It means we stop pretending this company's built on numbers alone." A few board members exchanged glances, confused, uncertain. "It means we start investing in things that actually matter," she added. "And what does that have to do with saving this company?" one of them asked. Evelyn didn't hesitate. "Everything." She paused, then said it. "Marcus Reed." The name cut through the room like something out of place. "Who?" someone muttered. "My partner," Evelyn said simply. William's expression darkened. "That's not appropriate." Evelyn tilted her head slightly. What's not appropriate is a company run by people who think humanity is a weakness. Her voice remained calm, but every word landed. Deliberate. You want stability? She continued. You want growth? Then you invest in something real. And this man, William said slowly, is that investment? Evelyn nodded once. Yes. A beat. Then, he builds accessibility solutions for people with disabilities, she added. Homes, spaces, real impact. The room shifted. Because now, this wasn't just emotion. It was strategy. And you think that offsets a multi-billion-dollar loss? Someone challenged. Evelyn's lips curved slightly. I know it does. Confidence. Unshaken. Because she wasn't guessing. She was seeing something they couldn't. What you don't understand, she continued, is that people aren't just numbers anymore. They're watching. They care where their money goes. She leaned back slightly. This company doesn't need a bailout, she said. It needs a purpose. Silence. Long. Heavy. Because for the first time, they were being asked to think differently. William stared at her. You're risking everything on a man with no credentials, no background, and no place in this world. Evelyn didn't blink. No, she said quietly. I'm investing in someone who didn't walk away when it mattered. That landed. Because it wasn't just about Marcus anymore. It was about them. About what they had done. What they hadn't done. William's eyes hardened. You're letting emotion cloud your judgment. Evelyn shook her head slowly. No, she said. I'm finally seeing clearly. A pause. Then, here are the terms, she said, her voice steady. Unshakable. We reinstate my authority. Full control. No interference. The room tensed. Second, she continued, we allocate funding to Marcus Reed's company. Immediate partnership. Full backing. And if we don't? William asked. Evelyn met his gaze, then leaned forward just enough to make sure every word landed. Then you find someone else to save your company. Silence. Absolute. Because they all knew there wasn't anyone else. The balance of power had shifted, completely, and for the first time, Evelyn wasn't asking. She was deciding. William looked around the room, saw the hesitation, the fear, the reality, then back at his daughter, the daughter he had cast aside, who now sat at the head of the table, holding everything together. A long breath left his chest. Approved, he said finally. The word echoed. Final. Evelyn didn't smile, didn't celebrate. She simply nodded, because this wasn't victory. Not yet. It was a step, one she had taken not for power, but for something far more dangerous, something far more real. As the meeting dissolved into motion, phones ringing, voices rising, plans forming, Evelyn turned her chair toward the window. The city stretched out before her again. Familiar, but different, because now she wasn't looking at it from above. She was part of it. And somewhere in that city, Marcus and Lily were still fighting, still holding on. Without knowing, everything was about to change. Evelyn's grip tightened slightly on the armrest, because this time, she wasn't going to let the world decide their worth. She was going to show it. And that was a power no one in that room truly understood. Because power, the kind Evelyn Carter now held, didn't come from titles anymore. It came from choice, from knowing exactly what mattered and refusing to trade it away. The city moved fast again, faster than it had in weeks. Inside Carter Industries, decisions were being made at a speed that left people scrambling to keep up. Meetings stacked on top of meetings, calls overlapping, numbers shifting. But for the first time in a long time, those numbers weren't the center of everything. Evelyn sat at her desk, sunlight pouring through the floor-to-ceiling windows, reflecting off polished glass and steel. It looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. Her hands rested on the desk, still, grounded. Because this time, she wasn't chasing control. She already had it. A knock on the door broke the silence. "Come in," she said. The door opened. Her assistant stepped in, new, nervous, unsure how to read her yet. "Ms. Carter," he said, "the transfer has been approved." Evelyn didn't look up immediately. "Details. The initial investment into Reed Accessibility Solutions is complete," he continued. "Funding has been wired, legal partnerships drafted. They're requesting a meeting to discuss next steps." Evelyn nodded once. "Schedule it." A pause. Then, "Also," he added carefully, "there's been some pushback from the board." Evelyn finally looked up. "Of course there has. They're concerned about optics." A small smile touched her lips.
Let them be concerned.
The assistant hesitated, then nodded and left. The door closed, and Evelyn leaned back slightly in her chair, because she knew what came next. The hardest part. Not convincing a boardroom, not restructuring a company, but facing the one person who didn't know any of this. Marcus. Across the city, Marcus stood in a narrow hallway of an aging apartment complex, tools in hand. A broken door hinge, a leaking pipe, another small job, another small payment. It wasn't enough, but it was something. Inside the apartment, an elderly woman watched him quietly. "You charge too little," she said. Marcus shrugged. "It's what you can afford." She shook her head. "That's not how the world works." Marcus tightened the last screw and stood up. "Maybe not," he said, "but it's how I work." The woman studied him for a moment, then reached into her purse, pulled out a few bills, pressed them into his hand. "Take it," she said, "and don't argue." Marcus hesitated, then accepted. "Thank you." As he stepped back into the hallway, his phone buzzed. He pulled it out. Unknown number. He stared at it for a moment, then answered. "Hello?" A pause, then, "Marcus." He froze. That voice, familiar, unexpected. "Evelyn?" he said. Silence hung between them for a second, heavy, full of everything unsaid. "I need to see you," she said. Marcus leaned against the wall. "You left. Not an accusation, just fact." "I know," she said quietly. Another pause. "Why?" he asked. Evelyn closed her eyes on the other end of the line. "Because there wasn't a simple answer. I thought it would protect you," she said. Marcus let out a slow breath. "It didn't. I know that now." Silence again, but different this time. Less sharp, more honest. "Where are you?" he asked. "I'll come to you." An hour later, the black sedan pulled up outside Marcus's building. It didn't belong there. Too clean, too quiet, too expensive. People noticed. They always did. Evelyn stepped out, adjusting her coat slightly as she moved forward in her chair. The building looked smaller than she remembered. More worn, more real. And for the first time, it didn't intimidate her. Marcus stood at the entrance, watching, waiting. He didn't move right away, didn't rush toward her. He just stood there, taking her in. "You came back," he said. Evelyn stopped a few feet away. "I said I would." He nodded slowly, but his expression didn't soften. Not yet. "What changed?" he asked. Evelyn met his gaze. "Everything." A beat. Then, "I know about the custody case," she added. Marcus's jaw tightened. "That's not your fight." "It is if I'm the reason it started." Silence, because neither of them could deny that. Evelyn took a breath. "I made a deal," she said. Marcus frowned slightly. "With who?" "My father. The company." His expression darkened. "You went back?" Yes, the word landed heavy. And you think that fixes anything? He asked. No, she said, but this might. She reached into her bag, pulled out a folder, held it out to him. Marcus didn't take it right away. What is that? An investment, she said. In you.
He stared at her, confused, suspicious.
I don't need charity. Evelyn shook her head. It's not charity. Then what is it? She held his gaze. Recognition. A pause. Then, for what you build, she added. For what you do. For who you are. Marcus looked down at the folder, then back at her. You don't even know what I do. Evelyn's voice softened slightly. I do. She gestured toward the building behind him. You fix things people can't afford to replace. She nodded toward his hands. You make places livable, accessible, safe. A beat. You do it without asking for anything back. Marcus didn't respond, because no one had ever said it like that before. No one had ever seen it like that before. I want to build something with you, Evelyn continued. Something bigger. He exhaled slowly. And why me? Evelyn didn't hesitate. Because when I had nothing, her voice caught slightly, then steadied. You stayed. Silence filled the space between them, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It was something else, something shifting. Marcus looked down at the folder again, then slowly, he took it. Not because he fully trusted it, not yet, but because something in her voice felt real. Behind them, a small voice broke through. Evelyn? They both turned. Lily stood in the doorway, eyes wide, hopeful. Evelyn felt something inside her chest tighten. Hey, she said softly. Lily ran forward, stopped just short of her, as if unsure. You came back, she whispered. Evelyn nodded. I did. A pause, then Lily stepped forward and hugged her, careful, gentle, but real. Marcus watched it all, quiet, still, and for the first time since everything had started to fall apart, he felt it. Not certainty, not yet, but possibility. Because maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of something breaking. Maybe it was the beginning of something being built. Not just a business, not just a second chance, but a life that neither of them had ever truly believed they were allowed to have. The winter slowly loosened its grip on Chicago. Snowbanks shrank into gray slush along the sidewalks. The air softened. The city breathed again. And in a small, rented office space just a few blocks from Marcus's neighborhood, something new began. The sign wasn't flashy. No glass towers, no polished marble, just simple letters on the door. Read Accessibility Solutions. Inside, the space smelled like fresh paint and sawdust. Folding tables held blueprints, tools lined the walls, coffee cups sat half-finished next to sketches and notes. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Marcus stood in the middle of it all, sleeves rolled up, staring at a design spread across the table. A wheelchair ramp for a family home. Simple, affordable, life-changing. Evelyn watched him from across the room. Not as a CEO, not as someone above him, but as someone learning. You're overthinking the angle, she said. Marcus glanced up. Or maybe I'm trying to make sure it actually works. She wheeled closer, looking down at the plans. It will, she said, because you're thinking about the person using it, not just the structure. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. Guess that's something you can't teach in a boardroom. Evelyn smiled slightly. No, she said, but it's something I had to learn the hard way. A pause settled between them. Comfortable, easy, different from before, because now they weren't just surviving, they were building. Lily burst through the door a second later, backpack bouncing against her shoulders. Guess what? She shouted. Marcus chuckled. What? I told my teacher what you do, she said proudly, pointing at both of them. I said you help people walk again, even if they can't. Evelyn felt her chest tighten slightly. Marcus smiled. Did you now? Lily nodded enthusiastically. And she said that makes you superheroes. Marcus glanced at Evelyn. Guess we've been promoted. Evelyn laughed softly. Without the capes. Lily frowned. We should get capes. The room filled with laughter, and for a moment, everything felt simple. But life didn't stay simple for long. A week later, the courtroom decision finally arrived.
Marcus sat at the kitchen table, the letter in his hands. Evelyn sat across from him. Lily stood nearby, watching both of them closely. Marcus opened the envelope slowly, carefully, as if the paper itself might break. His eyes moved across the page, once, twice. Then he stopped. Silence filled the room. Well? Evelyn asked gently. Marcus looked up. His voice was quiet. She stays. Lily gasped. What? She stays, Marcus repeated, this time with a smile breaking through. Full custody. Lily ran straight into his arms. He held her tight, eyes closing for just a second. Relief. Real relief. Evelyn watched them, something warm and steady settling inside her chest. Because this was what it had all been for. Not the deal, not the power, not the company, but this moment, this family staying together. Later that evening, snow began to fall again. Lighter this time, softer. Evelyn stood outside in the small yard behind the house. The world was quiet, still, the kind of quiet that didn't feel empty anymore. She held onto the railing beside her wheelchair. Slowly, carefully, she pushed herself up. Her legs trembled, uncertain, weak, but they held, just enough. One step, then another. Small, barely there, but real. Tears filled her eyes before she even realized it, not because of the pain, but because of what it meant. Behind her, Marcus stepped outside. He stopped when he saw her, didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. Evelyn turned slightly. A breath caught in her chest. I didn't think, she started. Marcus shook his head gently. You don't have to say it. She smiled through the tears. I almost lost everything, she said anyway. Marcus walked closer, slowly, carefully. And you didn't, he replied. Evelyn looked at him, then at Lily, who had come to the doorway, wrapped in a blanket, watching them both. I almost lost this, Evelyn said softly. Marcus followed her gaze, then looked back at her. But you didn't, he said again. A pause, then, you found it. Evelyn let that settle, because he was right. She hadn't been saved by money, or power, or the life she used to have. She had been saved by something much simpler, something quieter, something most people didn't even notice. Kindness. The kind that didn't ask questions, didn't expect anything back, didn't walk away when things got hard. She looked at Marcus. At a bus stop, she said quietly. He smiled, in the middle of a storm. Evelyn nodded. And you didn't leave? Marcus shrugged slightly. Didn't seem right. She let out a small laugh. Funny how one moment like that, her voice softened, can change everything. Marcus looked at her, then at the snow falling around them. Yeah, he said, it can. Lily stepped outside, running toward them, snowflakes catching in her hair. She grabbed both of their hands. Come on, she said. Let's make a snow angel. Evelyn hesitated for half a second, then smiled. All right. Marcus helped steady her as she moved. Slow, careful, but stronger than before. The three of them stepped into the yard together, into the soft snow, into something new. And as Evelyn looked around, at the small house, the quiet street, the life she never planned, she realized something she hadn't understood before. The life she almost lost was never the one she needed. The one she needed
was the one she almost didn't choose. And sometimes, the person who changes your life isn't the one with power, or money, or answers. Sometimes, it's just the one who refuses to walk away. Like Marcus, standing in the snow beside a broken woman the whole world had already abandoned. And a year later, holding her steady as she took her first steps again. This story reminds us that real strength isn't loud. It shows up quietly and stays even when no one is watching. And sometimes the smallest decision to stay can become the turning point that rewrites someone else's entire life. So today, if you see someone struggling, don't overthink it. Just pause and be there for a moment. That's all Marcus did. And it changed everything for Evelyn. If this story touched you, comment 1 below.
And tell me, have you ever been in a moment where someone simply stayed when everyone else left? Because in the next story, one simple choice like that leads to a truth no one was ready to face.